Hi, Ms. Smith. Lee Gallus with Rebel News. During your campaign, you said that not only would you issue an apology to those prosecuted during COVID restrictions, but you would also grant them amnesty. When can we expect those apologies?
I can apologize right now. I'm deeply sorry for anyone who was inappropriately subjected to discrimination as a result of their vaccine status. I'm deeply sorry for any government employee that was fired from their job because of their vaccine status, and I welcome them back if they want to come back. As for the amnesty, I have to get some legal advice on that, and so I've already asked my staff to request that advice so I can see how we would be able to proceed on that. My view has been that these were political decisions that were made, and so I think that they can be political decisions to offer a reversal. But I do want to get some legal advice on that first.
Would that also have to do with the timeline for the proposed amnesties?
I would have to see if I can do it, I will do it at the earliest opportunity. So I'm hoping within the next week I'll get that legal advice. Thank you.
It's not a bad answer. Not a bad answer to the extent that they don't browbeat an apology out of her, because when you talk about compensation, reparations for one form of discrimination, get ready to be pounded by the media. How can you give one by apologizing for this form of discrimination? You're tacitly accepting and condoning other forms of discrimination unless you come out equally and vocally and condemn those other forms of discrimination. That's Danielle Smith, the new Premier of Alberta. And I gave her a bit of a hard time last week because when she came out and said that she hadn't seen a group of people in her lifetime be so discriminated against as the unvaccinated over the last year and a half, she made a wonderful public statement. And anybody who is not vaccinated and has suffered the consequences, but also suffered the injustices that have been inflicted upon them, I think they were happy to hear it. I think they were relieved finally to have a voice saying it for them. And then for whatever the reason, not for whatever the reason, politicians began immediately demanding an apology from Danielle Smith. It was insensitive. It ignores other forms of discrimination. How could she dare compare the discrimination against the unvaccinated to the discrimination against other minority groups, ethnic groups who have experienced historical discrimination? And they browbeat. It wasn't an apology because those who hate her would not regard it to be an apology, and those who love her will say, well, she didn't apologize. A clarification. I didn't mean to insult, demean, degrade. I will do my best to listen to all groups and yada, yada, yada. An unnecessary clarification that is something tantamount to bending the knee to the social pressure to try to make her feel bad for saying what I believe needs to be said and what many people need to believe needs to be said, that the last year and a half to 2 years has been shameless, unconstitutional, and as we're seeing now, and as we're going to see in greater detail tonight, unscientific discrimination. But she came out and said that last week and then was browbeaten into something of an apology, and I gave her a hard time for that. And maybe she's learned a lesson now in politics, although she seems experienced enough to have learned the lessons. Maybe she's going to continue to prove that she is principled and that whatever lapse that might have been for those who want to be critical, she's nonetheless staying the path. Let's just hope she doesn't have to apologize, clarify for this. An apology for those who have been discriminated against for their medical choices, fired, prevented from boarding planes and trains, prevented from seeing loved ones for joyous occasions, for mourning occasions, prevented from living normal lives. And she's apologizing. And she's apologizing, A, because it's the right thing to do, B, because she has the courage to do it, and C, I can't think of what the C is. But she's sticking to it, which is good, and sticking it to the people out there who want to dump on her for saying what needs to be said and for what is right to be said. And who's dumping on her? Well, who's dumping on her? Who do you think's dumping on her? Let's just see here. Jason Murkosoff. Are we looking at the same thing here? Jason Murkosoff, listen to this. Premier Danielle Smith was asked by reporters Saturday about her comments yesterday on Alberta Health Services' partnership with the World Economic Forum, that populist right-wing whipping post. In response, Smith, ex-columnist radio host, dismissed journalists as in the entertainment biz. And this is what Danielle Smith wrote, apparently. There are certain forums that are entertainment forums. I was on an entertainment forum for a long time, Chorus Entertainment, ironically enough called Chorus, because they chant the same chorus in tandem. And I recognize that you're in the entertainment industry, making sure you find the most outrageous statements that can get a lot of clicks. Reporter, and there have been a lot of them. I recognize that. But you know what? I'm here to govern. I'm here to talk about the things that are the most important about to Albertans. Maybe there's a typo there. The man who's not to prove her wrong, Jason Murkosoff, I write analysis and do other things for CBC Calgary. The man who's funded, whose salary is paid through taxpayer dollars, our taxpayer dollars, by the very government that Danielle Smith is standing up to, is now, taking aim at Danielle Smith. Premier Danielle Smith was asked by reporters Saturday about her comments yesterday about Alberta Health Services' partnership with the WEF. Oh, and that's not a problem to this government subsidized propagandist. That's not a problem. That's not the problem. The WEF partnering up with our government to impose, things like the known digital traveler identity program, policy about reducing emissions, making us eat bugs, making us have nothing and being happy about it, even though that was just an opinion piece that one of their columns, whatever. The problem is not that Canada and Alberta is partnering with a non-elected global government, non-elected global entity. That's not the problem. The problem is that the right wing used the World Economic Forum as a whipping post. That's the problem, according to propagandist, state-subsidized Jason Murkosoff. And now that we have a politician who's saying, what the hell are we doing partnering with these unelected global entities that have global interests above and beyond national interests, partnering with our government, whom they've penetrated so thoroughly? Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, Chrystia Freeland on the board of trustees of the WEF. The problem is not the partnership you see with this globalist entity and the government that pays this guy's salary. The problem are the right-wingers, the populists who use the WEF, unelected entity that has infiltrated our government, as a whipping post. Not sure I can recall a government leader wave off journalists as being in the entertainment industry like that, particularly one that was a year ago a professional in the news and journalism industry. Maybe she knows and just understands a little something, Jason. Maybe her experience in the entertainment industry that is Canadian media, maybe that's taught her something. Maybe she knows something that we should actually rely on her experience for knowledge that some of us might not have. But WEF and populists are the problem, LOL. No, it wasn't the WEF that was the problem. It's the populists, right-wingers, using the WEF as a whipping post. Because the WEF are the victims in all of this. A non-elected globalist entity with a leader, Klaus Schwab, who has very proudly boasted about having penetrated the Canadian Parliament. Over half of the Canadian Parliament has been penetrated by this unelected global entity. That's not the problem. The problem is that people complain about it. The problem is that right-wingers, populists, complain about the fact that our government has been infiltrated. Admittedly, this is not my conspiracy theory. This is out of the words of Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum. He has bragged about having penetrated the Canadian government. Let me see something here. The problem is not that this has happened. The problem is that these yokels have the audacity to complain about it. I need to play it so that nobody accuses me. Klaus Schwab, Viva frei, penetrated the cabinet tweets. Yes, I know I've tweeted it many times. Oh, well, I'll take someone else's tweets here. Oh, yes. Oh, listen to this. Yeah.
And I have to say, When I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel,
There's a mic problem with him, not me.
even, Vladimir Putin, and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina, and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau.
Jeez Louise, man, stop that.
And I
Penetrates him.
know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders.
Or for us. Yeah.
And that's true in Argentina too. Wow.
Yeah, get your mic. You want to rule the world. Get your mic
It's
situation
true in
fixed.
Argentina, and it's true in France now. I mean, with the president, with a young global leader. But what is important for me,
Let me just play that part again.
Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina, and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets.
Penetrate the
So
cabinets.
Yesterday,
Metaphorically
I was
speaking.
at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of
They're for us. They are
half
for
of this
us.
cabinet are for our actually young global leaders of the world economy.
Yeah, no, that's not the problem, according to the CBC journalist. The problem is that right-wing yokels complain about it. And I know that we've seen this one, Chrystia Freeland, WEF. I know that we've seen this here. Let's just here. Just look at the bottom here, peeps. This is Chrystia Freeland. Reject cookies. Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Office of the Deputy Prime Minister. I don't know why she's got a profile there. Just so everybody knows, she is a member of the Forum's Board of Trustees. They have penetrated half of the cabinet. But that is not the problem. The problem is us, the Canadian citizens who complain about this. Shut up and let us penetrate your country. Okay. Everybody. First of all, the echoes here because my insulating gym mat is not here. Barnes is not coming in tonight. Nothing bad. He's traveling. He's got a number of events this week until Thursday. Cannot come in. So it's going to be me and all of us, except we have a special guest coming. Oh, geez, she's coming in at 6:30. Allison Moore, when we move over to Rumble, might be more to 6:40, Allison, if you're watching. When we go over to Rumble, exclusive, we're going to talk about the latest vaccine stuff because sweet, merciful goodness, it's going to be serious. Before we get started tonight, I've got to thank my sponsor because you may have noticed this said there was a little sponsored thing as you clicked on this. This stream contains a paid promotional product, which is not just a product that has paid to come on the show. It's a product I use and have liked and entered into a relationship with called EnviroCleanse. It's an air purifier, a box that purifies air, filters out particulate matter, and then filters out what do they call, like chemical matter and bacteria matter. I use it. I used one in Montreal because we have dogs. I have kids. We have asthma in the family, and it's important for us to have clean air. So we use this thing called EnviroCleanse. Now, this particular one was a little more expensive than the one we had in Canada, and it's fantastic. It's got a HEPA filter, which filters out particulate matter, and then it's got a patented purifier, which neutralizes bacteria and particles to smaller than the Rona, smaller than the COVID particle. So they swear to it that you'll be healthier. It will neutralize viruses, although for legal reasons one cannot specify which viruses can be neutralized, but it neutralizes particles which are smaller than the Rona. Patented technology in the filter. You got the filter, which is HEPA, which just filters out particulate matter. Then you got the purifier part, which is patented. Department of Defense uses it. I can disclose that. Can't disclose how and when, but the Department of Defense uses it. It's in 300,000 classrooms across Canada. It's $699. It is an expensive air purifier. But for those of you who know that you need one, don't waste your money on a not good one. get a good one. So the sponsor, and it's a product I use. It's out in the living room next to Pudge. The website is ekpure.com. E, Echo, K, Kilo, pure.com. Promo code Viva will get you 10% off the product. It'll get you a air quality test, which is a third-party test, so you can test your air, know that it's working. And there's also 0% financing, but ekpure.com, promo code Viva. And again, I don't partner up with random sponsors, sponsors that I like, sponsors that I have faith in, and sponsors of products that I use. So EK Pure, thank you for having the audacity of sponsoring a channel of the hinged and fringed minority. And also thank you for making a kick-ass air purifier product. ekpure.com, promo code Viva. I have one in the living room. It's on right now. You can't even hear it. Okay, that's it. Now let me get some super chats because this has been coming in. Dustalov Aktmankari. I can't make it. Keep fighting. Build that bag. 9 on 7. Okay, man. Your super chats are getting more and more intense as we go. There are 4 lights. We love you, Susan. Okay, thank you. Just so you all know, YouTube takes 30% of super chats. If you don't like that, we are simultaneously streaming on Rumble. I've checked. We are good. There's a $5 Rumble rant. Short, fat, bald, ugly guy says, oh my God, Rumble sucks. 11 minutes to join. And Stroom and No was here 5 minutes early, both app and website. Well, I've read it. They're working on user interface issues. So thank you. Nice shirt. I have the same one in Army Green. I met somebody today at Gumbo Limbo who said, I've got all of those shirts. I've got that shirt in every color. It's my new favorite shirt. I picked it up actually at Plato's Closet, a secondhand place. Always punctual. That is good for us. I was a few seconds late tonight. I had to get my stuff in. Write on Twitter got to be banned for journalists. Writing on Twitter got to be banned for journalists. I don't know what that is, but I'll have a look at that afterwards. Viva, have you looked into what Danielle Smith, new Prime Minister in Alberta, has been saying? Finally, a Canadian politician speaking some truth. Kevin Taylor, I think that was what our intro was about. I like her. I just, maybe she had strategy behind her initial apology. Maybe she's learned a lesson. Don't apologize to the mob because what they're seeking is not a sincere request. It's a power play. Have you ever considered Whitney Webb for Sidebar? She has a new book out, One Nation Under Blackmail, all about the rise of Epstein and all involved. I will keep that and screen grab that. I'm open to anybody for a sidebar, even Ethan Klein. Okay. Before we go over to Rumble, people, let's just start with the big news of the week, of last week. We talked about it. Steve Bannon, sentenced to 4 months in jail. The fine was not where they got him. I actually had predicted that Bannon was going to get more in the fine and less in the jail. I thought they were going to go with the minimum 1 month per contempt charge and a big fine to teach him a lesson, because I also, was operating on the basis that maybe there would be less sympathy on an appeal of an excessive fine than on an appeal of excessive jail time. But no, they went the other way. The judge went the other way. And my goodness, I like Steve Bannon. This is a crazy thing because until all this stuff started happening, I could say I didn't know all that much about Steve Bannon. I got to know Steve much better during the trucker convoy in Canada, because Steve and the War Room had me on multiple times to talk about my documenting that protest. I knew of Steve Bannon. I know Steve Bannon a lot better now because of the convoy, but because of what they've been doing to Steve Bannon for the last year and a half. When a tyrannical regime wants to make an example out of someone, or they decide that they're going to go after someone and martyrize them, you know what ends up happening? Their message reverberates. They actually get better known. Their message is amplified to more people. And Bannon, speaking after having gotten sentenced, I'll see if I can find that video because it's fantastic. He's eloquent. He's well spoken. He's determined. And you watch that video for anybody who hasn't already made up their mind, and he's reasonable and sounds sincere and determined. Well, I'll see if I can pull up the video afterwards, but just the news. Bannon sentenced to 4 months in prison for flouting the January 6th panel. Flouting it. NPR. You could tell the terms that they use and the agency reporting it. If it were more right-wing, they would say for defying an abusive congressional subpoena, or they might just be objective. So they sentenced him to 4 months and $6,500 fine for criminal contempt. The good news is that they've released him pending his appeal. And the reason for that is quite logical. It will take more than 4 months to hear the appeal. And if he has to go to jail pending his appeal, well, any success on the appeal becomes illusory. And so, it's what happened with Jussie Smollett. And as much as everybody hates Jussie Smollett, it is only fair that for the nature of the conviction, he be released pending an appeal, because if it gets overturned on appeal, he's already done his time. In which case, the appeal is illusory. The type of crime, look, Jussie Smollett's crime, I would argue, is much more serious. I think most people would agree with that, but not like severely violent risk to society to be released pending his appeal. Hold on, what does this say? Andrew L. Viva just realized the guy interviewing Klaus was David Gergen. Alex Jones ambush interviewed him about being a member of the Bohemian Grove. Okay, I didn't notice that. So Bannon, they got Bannon for 4 months. He's going to appeal it. That's the news. The prosecution, by the way, because the prosecution is after justice, right? They're not after just a conviction. Federal prosecutors were seeking what they describe as a severe penalty, 6 months in jail for contempt of a congressional subpoena. What did Eric Holder get? Fast and the Furious. What was his position? Geez, he was a member of, I forget his position now. Attorney General. It was Attorney General. What did Eric Holder get for defying a congressional subpoena to look into an unlawful government program by which they were running illegal guns or guns illegally to Mexican cartels to track the crimes committed with them? What did Holder get for defying a congressional subpoena? He didn't even get prosecuted. He was found in contempt of Congress. Obama's Attorney General or whoever it was declined to prosecute. What did Michael Sussman get for lying to the FBI? Charged, went to trial. What did he get? Oh yeah, he got acquitted. What did Igor Danchenko get for allegedly lying to the FBI? He got arrested. He got indicted. He went to trial. What did he get? How much time? Oh yeah, acquitted. But Steve Bannon defies a congressional subpoena, doesn't show up to testify, and plead the fifth. So it would be showing up as a purely procedural matter. Doesn't produce documents. Charged, indicted, charged. A trial in which he couldn't raise certain legal defenses, in which he was deprived of the legal defenses that he was allowed to raise. Convicted. Federal prosecutors were seeking a severe 6 months in jail they were seeking, and a fine of $200,000. Oh, he pursued a bad faith strategy of defiance and contempt. Well, there would be no good faith way to not respect a congressional subpoena. So it's superfluous rhetoric. No one has been incarcerated for contempt of Congress in decades. Oh, yeah, I know. Who was the last one? Do tell. I wonder if it's politically motivated. In its court filing, the justice took the unusual step of listing a series of bombastic and demeaning statements Bannon made about the justice system and lawmakers. Oh, that's proof of character. It's interesting. He called the House Select Committee Chair, Benny Thompson, gutless. Oh my goodness, sent him to jail for 4 months. He called a politician gutless and said the panel is conducting a show trial. Oh my goodness, what better way to prove that it's not a show trial than by severely punishing your political adversary or ideological adversary? What better way to show it's not a show trial than to strip an accused of certain grounds of defense and then sentence him to 6 months in jail? Bannon used his podcast, which traffics in conspiracy theories. Oh, which one? Like the Russia collusion conspiracy theory? The Steele dossier conspiracy theory? The Trump shithole countries conspiracy theory? The Trump removed Martin Luther King's statue from his office conspiracy theory? That one? Oh yeah, he uses it, which traffics in conspiracy theories, to target people he considered his political enemies. Do we appreciate the thorough confession through projection that's going on right here? They are doing exactly what they are accusing Bannon of doing. He refused to turn over there, blah, blah, blah. All right, the rest we know. Oh, and they've got Peter Navarro also. He's going to trial on misdemeanor charges of criminal contempt for stiffing the January panel too. Oh my goodness. The panel, which was arguably not legitimately constituted, arguably, because there's an argument about this. It doesn't meet the quorum of 12 members. Bipartisan with 2 Republican members, Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, who were appointed by Nancy Pelosi and not by the bipartisan aspect of the committee. No, it's totally not political. Totally not political and totally legitimate, totally not a show trial. And that's it. It's totally on the level. I remember when Trump came out and called Steve Bannon Sloppy Steve. Cheeto Jesus was the best. Looking at that avatar. So Bannon is out pending his appeal, and he's got a robust appeal. We'll see where it goes. But it's just political rubbish. Democrats got all 3 branches of government, and we cannot even get legalized weed. I know people disagree with it, but I don't. I don't agree with. I support pardoning nonviolent petty marijuana offenders, it would follow that legalizing recreational marijuana, it would be tough to argue that recreational marijuana should not be legal, but alcohol, which is, I just listened to the Anthony Huberman podcast. He's a neuroscientist. He did a 2-hour episode on alcohol. Anybody who needed the impetus to not drink alcohol again, you listen to that, you'd think it's the most toxic substance on earth, but it objectively is, probably not good for you. The fact that alcohol is legal and marijuana is not, you could legalize marijuana with the same restrictions as alcohol, but anyhow, separate discussion. So that's the Steve Bannon. One more thing that we're going to talk about, speaking of political persecution, before we head on over to Rumble and welcome Alison Morrow to talk about the Rona Jibby jab. $2.75 trillion. $2.75 trillion. Now, I'm going to preface all of this by saying that I have nothing but the utmost of sympathy and heartache for the parents of Sandy Hook. And not saying it to say it. Like we have all had our own life experiences. I have known, I would say not firsthand, it's close to firsthand. Family, within our family circle, not immediate, quite close family. The devastation that comes with, give me one second. Sorry about that. Not at a good time that required call came. The devastation of losing a child from the parent's perspective. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about the Cotard syndrome, where someone feels like they're dead. They feel like they're dead in their own body. And trauma can trigger that. And the trauma of losing a child can trigger that in an adult. You can't even call it a cliche. It's any parent who's ever gone through it says there's a parent's worst nightmare is bearing a child, period, full stop. Nothing but sympathy. And I don't, I know people entertain certain theories about the Sandy Hook. I don't believe them. I don't believe in engaging in the discussion with them. I don't believe in silencing and shutting people up. People are going to believe what they want to believe. Shutting them down is not going to change their mind. And ultimately, nothing might change their mind. And then in which case, there's no point arguing. Just agree to disagree. You believe what you believe, and I'll believe what I want to believe. That preface all of it with that. And I'll preface it by even saying that I do believe Alex Jones said a couple of things which in the ordinary run of justice could have been maybe not defamatory, because the question would be whether or not someone is stating their belief, their opinion. Maybe defamatory, but then you'd have to get into the question of public figures, special purpose public figures, whether or not whatever he said, however wrong and outrageous it might have been, was it done with actual malice? There's that legal side to it. Then there's the legal argument, well, it was pure opinion, in which case it can't be defamatory, but it still could be intentional infliction of emotional distress. There are legal questions in there. And I had said from the beginning, and some people who, follow didn't like it. Some of the things Alex said were objectively wrong. They could have been defamatory, subject to whatever legal defenses were there. They could have been intentionally infliction of emotional distress if you believe that he intentionally said it to inflict emotional distress and not because he might have legitimately believed it, however insensitive and wrong it might have been at the time. There were statute of limitations issues. I'd say, subject to all of the legal defenses, Jones probably said certain things which would have been actionable. To go from there to a default judgment in multiple states to a judgment for words spoken of $45 million in Texas to be reduced because of punitive damage caps, then to a $965 million judgment against multiple defendants in Connecticut. That's enough to say I might feel bad for the parents. As our Supreme Court Justice in Canada once said, Judge Biche, B-I-C-H, the court cannot let sympathy guide it. The court cannot be guided by sympathy. It's a terrible thing to have to say, and it's a terrible thing to have to live by. You can feel exquisitely badly for parties. You could feel their pain and you can feel their trauma, but sympathy cannot, should not, and must not guide the court. It's not so as much sympathy as one can have for the parents. At some point, people have to say the process has to be respected. The system has to be respected. And above all else, even if I think Jones should be punished, the punishment has to be proportionate and reasonable. $45 million in Texas was not reasonable. $965 million in Connecticut is not reasonable. But it gets worse now because the $965 million split among 16 defendants. $120 million for was the biggest award for Robbie Parker. $90 million compensatory damages to an FBI agent who didn't have a child get killed in that incident, who didn't have any family member get killed in that incident. $90 million to an FBI agent because his character was maligned, impugned. He was accused of being, I don't think he was accused of being a crisis actor specifically. He was accused of not being an FBI agent, not wearing his uniform the right way. He had a picture that was used out of context or whatever. $90 million, not punitive damages, compensatory damages for an FBI agent doing his job that day. Somebody, however much pity and however sad and sympathetic you are for the plaintiffs, for the trauma they've gone through, you have to stop and say, this doesn't make any sense anymore. But it's now gone beyond that. It's gone now to what are laughable, ridiculous, and figures that make a mockery of the system. Is this the one? Here, let's look at this. This is from Bloomberg. I want to split up the outlets that I cite from. This is from Bloomberg. Sandy Hook families ask judge to max out on Jones penalty. Now, you recall that the $965 million was not punitive. It was not exemplary. It was compensatory. There is no cap on compensatory damages in Connecticut, from what I understand. From what I understand, the cap on punitive is a multiple of the compensatory. Do the math. Well, you don't have to do the math. I'll do the math. The judge already awarded the families $965 million in compensatory damages. That's to say, evidence was shown that the plaintiffs suffered $965 million in damages. Some of you out there might say Jones sent people to harass them. That was not fleshed out by the evidence. There was evidence to the effect that these people might have been harassed, not by anyone that Jones specifically, directly or indirectly asked to do it. Set that aside. They were harassed. People were calling them. People were writing them emails. They might have had to get extra security. Okay. They incurred the cost of security. They incurred emotional distress. $120 million for Robbie Parker. $90 million for an FBI agent. $90 million, by the way, in the context of that trial, all of the alleged harassment that Alex Jones directed their way, nobody was arrested. Nobody was charged. Nobody was charged for harassment. This is evidence that I discovered watching the trial. So whether these are compensatory damages for which evidence had to be adduced, $90 million for an FBI agent. Okay. Judge to decide damages under state deceptive trade law. The way some people are arguing around it is that Alex Jones made money off of his misinformation. Deceptive trade practices under the Connecticut Deceptive Trade Practice. It's CUTPA, Connecticut Unfair Trade Practices Act. That's how they're going to get around it, to try to even reasonably just. If I'm going to steel man the argument, it's under CUTPA that they could get these damages. But by the way, $965 million, just wait. Sandy Hook family said a Connecticut judge should impose, quote, the highest possible punitive damages for Alex Jones, suggesting by one calculation that could be as high as $2.75 trillion. They said this is coming from the lawyer. And I'm going to tell you something. I feel so bad for the families that I say they are either blinded by their trauma. Their trauma has driven them mad to the point where this is what they feel the need to do, to go after Alex Jones, a man who had nothing to do with the actual source of their trauma, that being their children having been killed in Sandy Hook, or they're being used by other people in their grief, in their sorrow. They are being used by other people for political purposes. The lawyer is at max it out, $965 million. Well, I don't know what the mathematical cap is on the the factor of punitive damages to compensatory. I guess it equals $2.75 trillion. The family said that additional damages are warranted on top of the nearly $1 billion jury award because Jones broke a state law barring the sale of products using false statements. He didn't break the law by selling products and making false statements about the products being sold, which is my understanding of what the law means. He made false statements. Let's just operate on the basis that they were false statements about somebody else in the context of selling products. It's not that he sold products and said, this will cure your whatever. It's that he said, I'm selling this product and Brett Kavanaugh is guilty of X, Y, and Z. So false statement about somebody while selling a product, and that's how they get to this. They reached the $1 trillion sum by multiplying the state laws up to $5,000 per violation fine by the 550 million social media exposures Jones' audience received. In the 550 million, I think they mean impressions here, by the way, as if impressions in the social media world means anything. At trial, the lawyer said that Jones reached 550 million users. That was an outlandish, preposterous statement for anybody who knows anything. Preposterous. Now it might have been they meant exposures, not individual users, exposures. $5,000 per exposure for the 550 million exposures. It was the largest of the several damages, whatever. And it goes on. The only appropriate punitive damages award in this case is the largest award within the court's power, the family's lawyer said in the filing. The defendants have acted willfully, maliciously, and evilly in full knowledge of the harm they are causing people who had no means to fight back except to bring this case. Yeah. And they couldn't even let Jones go to trial on the merits, avail himself of his legal defenses, actual malice, statute of limitations, opinion versus fact. Whether or not Jones was actually the source of the harassment that the families may have suffered. No, bypass all of that, default verdict, trial on the quantum, $1 billion, and now let's just max it out. $2.75 trillion. Alex Jones perpetrates this attack for one reason: greed. Say the people seeking $2.75 trillion in damages for words spoken. And it goes on. It doesn't matter. But just to put it into perspective, because it's tough. You can even hear that 2.75 trillion is the GDP of France. That won't mean anything to you. That won't mean anything because there's no human element to that. Let's to contextualize what $2.75 trillion looks like. I was thinking about it over the weekend, and Yeah. I wanted to see what the reparations that were being demanded for the Armenian genocide were. This is from the New York Times. It's an older article. Armenian groups are increasingly focused on reparations for genocide. What do you think Armenian groups are seeking by way of reparations for the Armenian genocide, which killed over I think it's 1.6 million Armenians? Let's say over 1 million Armenians. The Armenian genocide, pre-World War, just before World War I. Over 1 million Armenians massacred, killed, starved. A genocide. What are they asking for? For reparations? Where was it? Here we go. This is according to one website, which is quantifying the genocide for reparations from Turkey, among other countries. The website estimated the total value of reparations at approximately $3 trillion, of which it said Turkey owes about $1.64 trillion. Alex Jones, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress for words spoken. Alex Jones did not murder those children. Alex Jones was not in charge of the school that arguably failed to implement any sort of safety protocol to protect those children. They want $2.75 trillion from Alex Jones. They just want a cool reparations for the Armenian genocide quantum. And people are, saying Jones is getting what he deserves. Jones, in as much as you think he's getting what he deserves, set that aside. This is an all-out assault on the First Amendment. And even if you think Alex Jones' First Amendment protections do not cover defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, fine. You know what else the Constitution protects? Due process. And if he was going to be found guilty on the merits, he had a right but he defaulted on his discovery obligations, therefore the ultimatum, the ultimate penalty, default verdict. And we're seeing the impact of this assault on the First Amendment. Kanye West says he doesn't believe that George Floyd, says he believes George Floyd died from overdose of fentanyl and not from Derek Chauvin. Maybe Kanye's relying on the Hennepin autopsy report that came to certain findings, although it didn't come to certain conclusions. Now he's going to get sued for $250 million. Disagreeing with the cause of death publicly, $250 million. Say stupid things which might have been hurtful, which might have been factually incorrect, even if you apologize for them later, default verdict, $2.75 trillion. Armenian genocide reparations, $3 trillion. Alex Jones, 7 minutes of bad words, $2.75 trillion. And if people are not objecting to this and starting to say, as much sympathy as I have for these families, this might have gone a little too far. Well, this is a knife that cuts both ways. Okay, now with that said, let me just see one other thing here before I go over to Rumble. There were some rants, there were some chats. We got Mandrake. Yes, losing a child is horrible. The pain never goes away. However, it does not permanently rob someone of their sanity. This is bitter robbery at the expense of your loss. I call BS. No way. I'll say it never goes away. And then you can become so blinded by rage because of your trauma, and you have nobody to go after. The guy who killed the kids is dead. His family gone. The school destroyed. Their ability to go after the people who might have actually been responsible for the deaths themselves gone. They have no one else to go after except for Alex Jones. I can see it. It doesn't justify it. I can be very sympathetic to it. Viva, you're invited to fish my upcoming kayaking fishing tournament in SoFlo, trying to get some eyeballs on it. If you can plug the site, Triple Crown of Kayak Fishing, Freddie, New York. I'm screen grabbing this and I'm signing up for it. I thank you very much for the super chat, but I need to know the website. Oh, yeah. And as I've screen grabbed this, I'm going to look at it afterwards. Guaranteed. Heart Tackle, speaking of fishing. Oh, Heart Tackle, I just got rid of the of your $10 super chat in the flag, and I don't know if I can go back and find it. Give me 30 seconds. I see Allison's in the backdrop, and I can't be ruder than I've already been. Hold on. Oh, I can find it. Heart Tackle. Booyah. Great to see you here as always, sir. Heart, thank you very much. Cheers again from Kisby, Saskatchewan. Are you a glass half full or half empty these days? Keep up the good fight, brother. I don't know. It depends what's in the glass. Okay. Viva just realized, okay, I got that one. Okay, fine. Now, with that said, I'm going to give everyone the link to the Rumbles. Be so kind as to mosey on over, and we're going to talk with Allison Morrow, journalist. I think I can call her my friend. She's a friend. This is the link to Rumble. Mosey on over, and we're going to talk the Jibby Jabby, the most recent information coming out of not the CDC, the most recent decision coming out of the CDC, and the most recent information coming out of a certain FOIA request, which contained an unredacted vaccine order form for Slovenia. And what's in that will blow your mind. Okay, everyone, mosey on over to the Rumbles, if you would be so kind. And EnviroCleanse, just to plug it one more time before we go over there, ekpure.com, promo code Viva, 10% off the unit. They have 0% financing if you meet certain conditions. The Viva promo code also gets you an air testing unit. It's a third-party unit, and it has a red light, green light, and lets you know if the air quality is good, whatever. It's a phenomenal product. Patented filtration. Department of Defense uses it in 300,000 classrooms in America. And I actually want to try to find a way to get it into Quebec. Because for all of you who don't know, during the COVID lockdowns, the air quality in schools was so bad in general that what they were doing to increase circulation was opening the windows of classrooms in winter. I know this because they did this in my kids' school. Maybe instead of wasting $150 million on COVID ads, buy a unit per classroom so that kids don't have to open the freaking windows in winter to get air circulation in class. Okay, done. Rumble, ending on YouTube, removing. 3, 2,